Hey, this is Cody Wright, and you are watching For Bass Players Only.
Yes, you are.
Woo!
.com.
.com.
Hi, everyone. John Liebman here. You're watching For BassPlayersOnly.com. We're coming to you today on location from the London Bass Guitar Show. How cool is that? We're in London. This is my fourth or fifth time in London. I love it. Yes, cheerio and all that sort of rot. We're here with our good friend Cody Wright. How you doing, Cody?
Hey, I'm doing real good, John. Really, really good. Great to be here, man.
It's great to see you again. And last time we did an interview was at a NAMM show.
Yep.
We were sitting at the EBS booth. I was wearing an EBS cap, and you were wearing some kind of hat that, it looked a lot like that. Is that your trademark? Do you sleep with that or what?
I have slept with it before. It wasn't quite intentional, but it's comfortable. It's a good nightcap. I have another one that's really similar too.
Okay, yeah. Marcus Miller has always got his hat, his trademark hat.
Yeah, that one might be a little more difficult to sleep in, the one he has.
Well, let's catch up. Like, it was the damn show, it was, I think, 2017.
I believe so.
So that was a while ago, coming up on 3 years ago. You were talking about, your musical upbringing and your gear and gigs that you've done. And we talked about Eric Gales, and you talked about your upcoming solo record. Well,
Yep.
3 years later, I'm sure that's out, right?
No. Yeah, it's out in my imagination. But I'm hoping to release it this year.
You can look at me. We're just two guys talking here.
Okay. Yeah, hoping to release it this year and
This year meaning 2019?
19.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's the goal. It's a thing of I took it into my own hands, and then when I took it into my own hands, I realized that I could do whatever I wanted with it.
There you go.
So I'm just kind of taking my time in that way.
What can you tell us about the record?
It's a fusion of like electronic styles, funk stuff, fusion stuff. I try to keep it rhythmic and groovy, but also I try to have melodic hooks and things in it. Tommy Emmanuel is a huge hero of mine, and he told me to always have melody and singable qualities to your songs. So I try to blend that in, and with the obligatory bass technique stuff too, but keeping it within song constraints and musical, keeping it musical.
So it's not one of those bass records, but there's some of that cool bass stuff in it, right?
There's quite a bit of that. I did a version of Blackbird where I did a looper thing at the end, and instead of starting the loop with a normal bass line, I started it with a tapping part.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's a really fun approach. Just take your normal loop, but start it with a different part first. If you're used to starting it with the drums, start it with the tapping or start it with the bass instead.
Was any of that inspired by Jocko's arrangement? When I was doing my Jocko books, Play Like Jocko, Pastorius, and the Jocko, I think it's in the Jocko Play Along too, I'm not sure. But Blackbird, the way he did that was very cool. Was it any of the way you did it inspired by that, or was it inspired by Paul and the Beatles, or was it just a completely different concept that you had?
Well, pretty much anyone nowadays, most bass players, there's going to be some sort of Jocko thing, some sort of flavor in there that you can detect and hear. But for me, my main reference with that song was a version by two guitar players, a duo of acoustic guitar players, Birelli Legren and Sylvain Luc. And they did it on an album called Duet in 2000.
I love Birelli Legren. He's a good bass player too.
Yeah. No joke, man.
Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah, one of my biggest influences. So their version of that, and Bobby McFerrin's version of Blackbird too. Where he's doing all that
Are you
stuff.
doing any of that?
Yeah, all of them.
What's the title of the record?
The title of the record is Star Festival.
Star Festival.
Yeah, because I have a fascination with astronomy and just the stars and like this romantic image of the stars, like a cartoon caricature. I see that in my mind when I play a lot of music. So I that's what I called the album.
Well, what about Pluto? Did Pluto get ripped off because, they were part of us and now they're no longer part of us?
People don't have enough to do, man. It's like, dude, just leave the planet alone. I'm kidding.
Yeah, we don't get their tax revenue anymore or what?
Right? Oh, once they figure that one out, they'll reinstate it.
Let's talk about your gear. I mentioned we were at the EBS booth last time that we did your interview, so why don't we start there?
Yeah, totally. So EBS, their envelope filter and their compressor are incredible. I use those. I also use a dark glass compressor and an Emma discombobulator envelope filter.
Discombobulator?
Discombobulator. And it has a clean boost on it that's a really, really awesome clean boost. I also use TC Electronic Tuner, the Polytune. I have several Polytunes. Those are my favorite tuners. Tsunami Cables. I also use MXR, like patch cables, and I have some instrument cables from MXR too. They're amazing.
So cables really make a difference.
They do, yeah. Yeah, Tsunami has my signature edition cable out, and I like having the same cables in my chain. You know, don't mix because you don't know what you're mixing, and I don't know how all that stuff works, you know, all the internal workings of it. So I like to keep my cable array as much as I can consistent to itself.
All in the family.
Yeah, I like to keep it all in the family.
What you play Zahn bass, as I recall, right?
Yep, I've been playing Zahn for about 5 years. It just works the best for my hands, and I have a really light touch, and it brings that out because the composite and the way the pickups are so sensitive, it just works really well with nuance, tapping, picking, dynamics. You know, they tell on you though. The graphite will tell on you. It's clean.
And what about strings?
Strings, I use Dunlop Super Brights, and sometimes I use Zahn strings on the Zahn basses too. Those work well together.
And I don't think I asked you about amplifiers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I use Mesa Boogie. I have Subway D800 Plus and two Subway 115 cabs. That was my road rig with Eric Gales. Actually, I used the normal D800 when I was with Eric Gales. So D800 and 215s, then run that into the house. Also have a couple of other awesome rigs, Vanderclay, incredible, GR. But officially, yeah, Mesa Boogie.
Okay. What about the future? Once the record is out and some of the other heavy lifting is behind you, what else can we look forward to seeing and hearing from Cody Wright?
Wow. Well, yeah, the record is the big thing to get out of the way. I feel like that's, you know, the next step of my career. But at the same time, I don't want to rush it. And I've already written most of the material.
I don't think that's an issue anymore.
I don't think it is. Well, I've written most of the material for the next one too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. In the meantime, like during the mixing process, because right now I'm in mixing and mastering for Star Festival, and I've been in it for about a year or so. Been in that stage for about a year now. So next, I would love to be back touring. Yeah, I'm open. I would love to be back touring like next summer, next year, doing that. If it's for my own album, that would be cool too. But I'm open for other things, you know. The right one, the right thing.
I'm sure you will be, and if you come through our town or if you come through their town, we will be sure to make every effort to attend.
Oh man, that would be amazing. Just let me know.
Let me ask you a question about bass technique, because for Bass Players Only, we've been known for our interviews, and we've got on the bass side well over 600 one-on-one exclusive bass player interviews, and we're becoming very well known now for our instruction. I migrated all the content from johnliebman.com. That's now all part of forbassplayersonly.com. And we are teaching online bass. So I want to ask you what advice you can impart to somebody who wants to learn to play the bass. What is important, if there are maybe one or two things that you should absolutely keep in mind if you want to be a bass player, and even if you're just a hobbyist, not necessarily career-bound, what's important to keep in mind when playing the bass?
Find songs you love. Find songs that speak to you. Find songs that no matter what state you're in, it cuts through and makes you feel a certain way. Brings something out in you. Find those pieces, find those bass lines. Especially if you're just starting out, find that stuff. You know, the technique and the theory behind it, that's stuff that can be learned pretty easily compared to being able to feel a song in your heart. That's a special thing. So if you can find that, you know, it could be Larry Graham, it could be a guitar player, it could be a piano player, you know, people like that. But one of the guys that recently did that for me was Larry Graham. We all go through little phases like this, or maybe we don't want to play as much, it's not that we don't want to, it just happens. But then I was in one of those states, and I turned on Turn It Out, Larry Graham. My radio sounds good to me. Yep. And man, wow, wham, dude. Okay. So find that.
What if you are in a position where you have an opportunity to play with a band, and it may not necessarily be music that you love, but you want to have the right attitude and you want to play it really well? And, do you have to learn to love it, or should you just not do that? Or should you just, how would you approach a situation like that? Or how have you approached a situation like that?
Just, put on a smile and an open, good attitude, and just jump in, hold your nose and just jump into it. And
just figuratively hold your nose, though, right?
Figuratively hold your nose. Be your best self, I've had to do that. I mean, if you come into it with enthusiasm, you'll find something fun in it at some point. Unless it's like a situation where you have to just basically be a machine, which I've never done that. Most bands, you have some room for flexibility and freedom. So when we get just a little bit of that's like, makes everything kind of turn around and, oh, okay, this is really awesome,
Yeah, kind of takes me back to all those weddings I played back in the 80s and all that. What we play, Flash Dance and who knows, Roll Out the Barrel. I don't know what it was, but somebody said, a buddy of mine, he says, if you hate doing club dates, do them until you don't hate them.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one way to do it.
That's right. I probably asked you this last time, but I don't remember, so I'll ask you again. What would you be if you weren't a bass player?
If I wasn't a bass player, I would probably have something to do with animals or outside nature, something like that, some sort of work in that field. I also love teaching. I majored in writing in college, in creative writing, so I might do something related to teaching that. Yeah, I'm glad I have music,
Or teaching creative writing to animals outside.
Exactly.
Nobody's doing that.
Nobody's doing that. Yeah, they say you got to do something different, right?
That's right. Cody, it's always great catching up with you.
John,
Good luck with the record. We're going to watch for that text. Tell me the title of
Star Festival. It will be out. It's coming out.
Star Festival by Cody Wright. Watch for it. On location in London. London at the London Bass Guitar Show with our good friend Cody Wright. You are watching the #1 site for exclusive one-on-one bass player interviews, and now more than ever, more and more people's favorite site for learning bass online for bassplayers.only.com. I'm John Liebman. Let's play bass.